Yeah, when you're saying that, it takes me back to, chess right now, Gukesh.
Yes.
I think he's done remarkable. And I really want to understand at that young age, what must be his coaching like and what must be his mindset when he's sitting at that level playing world championship and winning. There's one small example that I read. He chose the biggest chair in the game
Yeah.
just to, like to feel like he's on top of it.
Yeah.
So I want to understand what must be going through Gukesh's mind.
Yeah. So chess is a really interesting sport through the lens of India. The reason why I say that is we probably have more than I think 40 grandmasters in India. Some of them as early as 16, 17. Gukesh was 19. If you look at any other sport outside of cricket, we don't have any results that are comparable to that. If you look at grandmaster being at the highest level in that sport. And I always use this as an example, firstly, before I even answer your question. I tell them, if you look at Indians, we have succeeded in almost every ecosystem outside of India purely on our ability to cognitively find smart solutions and outthink someone. We have a smart solution and then we attribute work to it and then we execute it along that day. Now, does it surprise you that outside of cricket, our best performing sport in the country is chess because it's a cognitively dominant sport? We're leaning into our strengths. Every other sport, we're not. So, firstly, Gukesh doing this here is playing into what could be our genetic and neurobiological strength. We need more data on that there. But we have significant data to show that yes, something is working and we are playing in an area that we're very, very good. That's why we're producing stars as early as 18, okay, in a country where we're not producing anything else at that age.
Absolutely.
When it comes to the mindset of someone like this, yes, he would have been coached into things like big chairs, things like the posture that you do, how you go in. All of these things are tiny attributes that contribute to your confidence, contribute to your competence, and do that. But it's also a byproduct of being in the flow. In that moment, he would not have been thinking too much. Most cricketers are not thinking too much. When a Virat walks out to bat or Rohit Sharma hops on, he's not thinking about my past results. He's trying to just be in the flow.
In the moment.
He's not trying to amplify his confidence because trying to raise my confidence is moving me out of the mind frame that I need to, which is focus on what I need to do.
Right.
Anything that moves you out of where you need to be is a distraction. So you'll notice that even in that game, they got to a stage where in the final, when he realized what the outcome was going to be, he could have seen that a few steps before, but he was in the flow in there. It really only hit him much later. So champions are people who can distill their mind into what needs to be done. They're not looking 10 steps ahead, they're looking one step ahead. They have an ability to understand where the game is going, they have an ability to understand the direction they need to take it, but they're evaluating execution here and now. And one thing that we coach in psychology is that a highly, highly positive and overconfident mind is as big a distraction as a mind that's labored by fear and anxiety. Both positive and negative can be equally distracting. This is why we want to distill everything down to now. So what Gukesh did is absolutely extraordinary, and he would have been coached, he would have been trained. And remember, it's a byproduct of process. So even though he's 19 years old, he's been playing the sport for 15 years, right? Any one of the people listening to us who does anything for 15 years will produce the same level of excellence because we know that. That's just how mastery is built.
So cricket as a sport started off with test and then it came down to ODI and now it's 20 overs. Do you think it is helping them become better at their craft? Or is it just like it's entertainment?
Yeah. And you've seen that, Karun Nair just scored 750 in the Vijay Hazare competition, averaging 750, 500s, 250s, and he was not selected in the team. So it highlights how much importance we give to these other tournaments. The other thing about the Indian national team is that these are contracted players. So if they're contracted players, that means that if they're out of form, we still have to play them. Indian national team is not selected on the most informed players. We have A, B, C contracts, and our contract players are the ones who are selected, with a small percentage that gets selected outside of that, because they play 365 days a year for the nation. So we must understand that, the national team is not selected on best form. We're not necessarily pulling the highest wicket taker or highest run scorer in any competition into the national team as incentive. We have contracted players and we stick to that, and that's what a team is. You have a responsibility and you have to figure it out if things are not working out.
How do you think is the transition from being a IPL player to a ODI player or a Test player?
I think it's closer at IPL than it is in any other domestic cricket globally. I feel Ranji, Vijay Hazare are miles away from international competition. I feel even South Africa, domestic cricket is very, very far from international. The IPL is the closest mirror. And earlier on, we are talking about IPL, we're talking about different. It's very important to understand Test cricket, 50 overs, and these are, don't see them as the same game or the same sport. They may be cricket, but they're completely different games. The psychology of how you coach it and how you play it is very, very different, And once you approach them through that lens there, you can evaluate things better.
We're off topic a little bit because you mentioned apartheid.
Yes.
I want to understand what was it like back then and what effect did it have on you? Because knowing that there is something that you want, like we spoke earlier, like the cognitive thinking of a human brain is happening because everything else is telling you no.
Yeah.
No, you can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. The only thing which no one can control is what's going on here.
Yeah, 100%.
Because no one needs to know it.
Yeah.
And you're feeling absolutely free here. And at that time, when you are, your environment around you is telling you cannot. And at that time, developing something and sticking to it. What was it like?
As an Indian person growing up, you had certain education pathways that were only open. You could do law, you could do accounting, and you could do a little bit of engineering. Education was the big one. But you didn't have every option. These were it. Done. We probably had only one university at that time that was taking people of color. It was very difficult because, like you said, the entire ecosystem is telling you no. So the apartheid, firstly, when you're in an oppressed ecosystem, it teaches you to work harder than you've ever had to work. It teaches you learn very quickly, I've got to do 10 times more than the next person if I want the same opportunity. So you cultivate a work ethic that's second to none. The second thing is you park any distraction or any noise, you park it to the side because it doesn't matter. There's nobody there who's listening to any of that. So if you want to be there and if you want to succeed, you really learn to filter the noise out and really focus. The third thing that it does is you learn very quickly that there's nobody that's carrying your placard of support. You have to develop the inner confidence and the courage to speak for yourself. You are your own best brand ambassador, right? So if you sit in the shadows waiting for someone to notice you, no one's coming. No one's knocking. No one's pulling you up saying, hey, you've worked really hard. We're going to give you this opportunity.
Yeah.
So these are all of the beautiful things that you learn and that oppression sort of cultivates in you. But the thing that broke me the most, because there was a period of time when I stepped away from sport for 4 years and I lived in a temple full time. The thing that broke me was that in an oppressed environment, the apartheid gave a few people of color an opportunity. I was one of those. So I got the opportunity to work with state level teams and stuff like that. But as that person was given the opportunity, I was also given the responsibility to take away opportunities from other people of color. I had to press them down. So this is what happens in an oppressed environment. Whether you see it in a workspace where a type of person, maybe from a certain spectrum or a certain gender is given an opportunity, they become the gateway to prevent others from that same position from coming up.
So it's like firing the bullet off your shoulder.
Firing the bullet off your shoulder. So that, when I learned what happened and what was happening and what they were using me for, I was very young. I was 21 years old. I couldn't live with myself, So I took a step back and I moved into the temple. And
What was that like?
The temple was incredible.
Where was that? But
in Durban,
Durban.
at the Hare Krishna temple. Kunal, that was like a learning of another. I moved from a world of sport where you're partying, doing everything. Now in the temple, you sleep at 8, wake up at 3:30. I learned the power of the ecosystem. We speak a little bit about that. The only reason I could wake up every day at 3:30 is because I'm in a room with 20 other brahmacharis who are all waking up. They're kicking you in the morning as you're going. You can't be awake, And even if you don't feel like going, the mind plays games. You're like, everyone's going to notice I'm the only guy not there. And, you get out there. So it cultivates a discipline. And I learned in those 4 years that, everyone talks about discipline. And I came up with the saying that is that discipline has to break you before it makes you. Right. So what does that mean? That means you have to stick to something for such a prolonged period of time, you don't even know where the end is. And even irrespective of what state of mind you are, what your body's feeling, you repeat, you repeat, you repeat. It literally breaks you down before the power of that exercise actually makes you and you learn the power of discipline. And I tell people, if you want to change, right, you have to do something where you have zero line of sight of when that ends. If you say I'm doing a 30-day challenge, your brain is strong enough to motivate for 30 days, for 100 days, for 300 days. It is. You have to do something with no line of sight. That is when discipline's truly, truly cultivating you from the inside.
And all your neurons start firing in
In
a
a
different
completely
direction.
different direction. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely lovely.